Okay, and welcome back. Another day. Glad you're along. We have a lot of news tonight to discuss and present to you for your consideration. Hopefully, as always, edification. Joel Skousen is up first tonight, the editor of World Affairs Brief, and we're very grateful to have Joel with us. He just got in from traveling, raced home, and is standing by. Hello, Joel. Thanks for being here.
Hi, it's good to be with you. Glad I was able to make it, Jeff.
You always come through for us. We appreciate that. There's an interesting little story. I'd like to start with Korea if we can. And I'm not sure if this is some kind of a psyop to maybe create dissension in North Korea amongst the upper level of the alleged government there. But the story today of Kim Jong-un's secret Brazilian passport being discovered was interesting timing. I don't know if you caught that or not, but I'll read a little bit for our listeners here. Brazilian passports, which were used by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and his father in an attempt to get foreign embassies to issue them travel permits, have been revealed for the first time. Black and white scans of the passports, which were issued by the Embassy of Brazil in Prague in February 1996. So this goes back. But what is the subliminal suggestion here to North Korea and the people there? He's planning to get away. Maybe he's going to leave us in the lurch. That's what this story is really all about. And I just wonder if you happen to see it and if you had any comments on it. You know damn well he's got a plan to get out of there, for he must, or he isn't smart as I think he is. But they don't want that kind of talk in the media anywhere.
Well, when this happened, of course, Brazil was under a communist government, and they do tend to stick together. Kim's father was restricted from travel within Western countries, and so having another passport, facilitated that. The son, of course, was educated in Switzerland. How he got permission from the government to do that, I don't know, but that's how they do that. So there's, going back so far, I'm not sure we can make the case that it's an escape plan.
Not now. Now, 20 years. Yeah,
but certainly Kim has his alternatives. If he were to escape, it certainly wouldn't be to Brazil. It certainly wouldn't be to Switzerland. It would be to China or Russia, who could protect him.
Yes, I agree. There is another story today, interesting, written by Crazy John Bolton. The legal case for striking North Korea first. Does the necessity of self-defense leave no choice of means and no moment of deliberation, writes John Bolton. He says the Winter Olympics closing ceremonies also concluded North Korea's propaganda effort to divert attention from its nuclear weapons and ballistic missile programs. And although President Trump announced more economic sanctions against Pyongyang last week, he also said bluntly, Phase 2 of U.S. action against the Kim regime, which, as he put it, may be a very rough thing. In other words, the increased sanctions, if they don't work, things could get ugly. Well, we've heard this so many times now, but I think the angle on this, Joel, that I'd like to present to you for a comment is the Pentagon made it clear that they are considering boarding ships, including North Korean vessels coming and going from North Korea with armed Marines, I would assume, and Navy vessels. That could be considered some kind of pirate action, couldn't it, on the open seas?
Well, not when you declare a blockade. You've got to remember that North Korea has, in fact, in a de facto manner, declared war on the United States, said, we will destroy you. But Trump, the Trump administration is probably trying to provoke an incident that will justify their strike on North Korea.
Oh, yes. Tonkin. Yes. False flag. Whatever. They want something.
Not a false flag. They want a real.
Yes. Agreed.
They want a real incident. Tonkin, of course, was a falsified one to justify the.
Right. In other words, but the mechanism is the same. It's, all right, we've been wrong. We have now carte blanche. We can go do what we need to do. All right, you're right. 100% correct, as always.
Most as your listeners know, I don't think this is a neocon plot like the Middle East where we have no business being there. North Korea is a security threat to the Western world, and its nuclear and missile program is, and it has to be taken out preemptively. I think the justification is already there, but I think Trump ought to get a declaration of war by quoting Kim of saying we're going to destroy you, and therefore
that would be a novel thing, wouldn't it? He actually would go to Congress with something.
Thing. And they're not about to do that because the advisors don't want to reestablish congressional control over the executive's ability to go anywhere in the world for neocon and globalist purposes to intervene. But this is a legitimate security threat, needs to be taken care of, and I don't think it's going to be done correctly. They're still talking bloody nose strike.
I know.
Thing to do. I mean, that's only going to provoke Kim to attack South Korea. One of the things I'm covering in the World Affairs Brief this week is South Korea's chemical weapons. A huge stockpile of chemical weapons in the form of artillery shells and even rocket warheads, not the big ballistic missiles, but they're tube launch rockets, from the DMZ, which can toss volleys in there. But this is a formidable weapon that has to be taken out, preemptively in the stockpiled areas, etc. You may not be able to get them all, but you can certainly get most of the delivery mechanisms if you really do a blanket area strike on the DMZ to shut down the artillery and the rocket launchers. I'm just afraid that Trump isn't going to do that correctly, and we're going to have another South Korean and North Korean war.
Certainly could happen. Here's a question for you. Trump keeps saying things, and you were the first to make this point clear, that contradict not only himself, but his policies stated and suggested in efforts, it would seem to me, to please people. Is he really just a softy real estate salesman? Or is he a man of real principle who just doesn't know how to employ those principles in terms of foreign policy?
No, he's a softy, and he's a spoiled person as well. He's used to having things his own way. And so, the only thing he's got good going for him is he's got some basic instincts that are good. But he doesn't have the wherewithal to counter the myriad of arguments his advisors throw up against him to dissuade him from those instincts. And like they did in Afghanistan, just a sham. I mean, to have someone so firmly against continuing this 18-year-long war in Afghanistan and then to just capitulate because of the arguments he got from the Pentagon, of which he had no defense against. And that's the trouble with Trump. He really doesn't have either an understanding of the conspiracy, doesn't understand that ISIS and Al-Qaeda are creations of U.S. and British intelligence, and maintained by Saudi Arabia and Turkey. Of course, Turkey's kind of jumped ship now and gone into the Russian realm, sort of, but it's kind of a mess in the Middle East. The biggest story that I want to cover relative to North Korea and the Middle East is this UN report claiming that 5 shipments from a Chinese trading firm have brought an entire chemical weapons factory to Syria. And it's bogus on its face. They continue to try to push the story that Syria is using chemical weapons. And these, of course, have been true false flag operations. Yeah. And now you have, and first of all, the UN doesn't tell how they know. I don't think the Chinese firm is going to be telling the UN what they're shipping, to Syria. But they claim, without any verification, whether they claim that they were stainless steel pipe, acid-resistant tiles, and, some other things that could conceivably, put together a chemical weapons factory. I mean, this is bogus on its face. Stainless steel pipe can be used for dozens of factories and chemical operations and things without being chemical weapons. And heat resistance tile as well in various furnace and factory and ceramic type industrial applications. I mean, this is just ludicrous that the Wall Street Journal and others are stating it as fact that they've shipped a chemical weapons factory to Assad. And this is simply to blacken the name of Syria. And right in the very article, the Trump administration is considering military action if there's any more use of chemical weapons in Syria. And, of course, with that kind of threat going on and the U.S.-controlled rebels in there with chemical weapons supplied by Saudi Arabia and Turkey, complements of the U.S. black operations, they can obviously, throw another chemical weapons attack and justify a major war. And that's what I'm predicting last week was with Israel hyping Saudi Arabia hyping the attack against Iran, both of those, and Hezbollah. Yeah. It looks like they're ginning up another major war in the Middle East. as background, remember I had said 3 years ago that the reason the U.S. was in Syria trying to destroy it was that Israel wasn't going to follow the globalist plan to attack Iran until Syria was taken care of. And so Iran is still in the crosshairs of the globalists, and that's why they did this Iran nuclear deal. It was a trap set up so that they knew that Iran would violate all the numerous conventional weapons provisions in there and justify an attack, which I think is coming this year. It's going to be a major Middle East war, and it may be, as we talked before, a ploy to be able to stop Trump from attacking North Korea. It's hard to tell where the globalist advisors are. People like John Brennan, who's this deep an insider in this globalist conspiracy. There's anyone talking about proactive, preemptively striking North Korea, and others trying to stop Trump from doing it. So I don't know where the globalists are on this.
Here's another angle. I saw the stories first yesterday, I think. They're trying to blame now North Korea as, and you mentioned this briefly, as the supplier of chemical weapons to Syria. This is. It's so obvious, these lies, and they're so nutty that it's a shame that they get ink, but they do. They get airtime. Kim is not sending Bashar al-Assad chemical weapons. Okay?
Why not just ship the chemical weapons to Assad? Why ship tiles and stainless steel pipe make him start from scratch? This is just ludicrous.
No, it is completely ludicrous. Here's another. This situation is extremely dynamic now, and I expect the pace and the cadence to actually increase in the next couple of weeks. The U.S. This is a big blow. State Department. The U.S. Trump's top diplomat for North Korea is retiring. He's just announced he's quitting, just as the prospect of talks with North Korea seemed back on the table. Ambassador Joseph Yun, Y-U-N, the special representative for North Korea policy in the Department of State, is quitting this week after more than 30 years in the Foreign Service. Yun is yet another member of the senior Foreign Service who is leaving while the department is still under a hiring freeze and many top roles have not been filled. So what kind of a signal does this send us? I mean, is he getting out before things get real ugly?
Well, you've got to remember that this is a guy who's been in play in the pacification of North Korea for many years. He's
multiple
on the other
administrations,
side. So he's not our friend, and he's not there to do anything but keep Trump. And I think he reads the tea leaves that the Trump administration is only going through the motions of sanctions just to prove that they're not going to work and to justify a final military action. And as I say, I'm in favor of military action. I'm in favor of it strong enough to actually stop Kim from attacking South Korea to any significant degree and not use troops to invade, just take out his offensive weapons, neuter the guy. But I don't think Trump's going to do that. I think we're going to have a war that will escalate, will cause troops. It'll be another Vietnam. You'll have Russia and China sending ships in, and they'll be off limits out of fear that you'll start World War III if you attack their ships, and it'll be a nightmare, just like Vietnam.
It could be worse, as bad as Vietnam was. Could be worse.
That's right.
This latest group of sanctions, we all know about that, but what we don't know about, I sent you a link. There are apparently, and I've got friends who have friends in the Marines, you do too, millions of them, but there are winter offensive operations being rehearsed, practiced. They have war games going on right now in Bridgeport on the eastern side of the Sierra in California. Marine training for winter conditions, suggestive of maybe North Korea.
Well, you got to remember that that's been ongoing. I've got a son-in-law who...
Nothing new, I understand, but
TOs at Bridgeport, so this isn't anything new. It's you'd have to say or show that they've tripled the staff and tripled the...
We won't know that. We won't know that.
Now that they're training people, the Marines at Bridgeport, that goes on every winter.
It's been around for years, but my next question was going to be, do we have any way of knowing the number or the intensity of the gaming and the training going on there. Has it been ramped up triple? We don't know.
I can find out. Yeah, I can find out.
There's a good thing to try to look into if you can. Okay, let's see here. What else do we have?
A little bit about this amnesty bill coming up. H.R. 47.
Yeah.
These are Eric Cantor people, basically, on the way out. They're going to be targeted for pushing amnesty. Representatives Goodlatte and McCall are on the no-no list for pushing amnesty. Well, they're saying we're going to get a little portion of the wall, and we're going to get some reduction in some type of chain immigration. But they're giving DACA amnesty, work permits, IDs, immunity from existing and claiming that they're going to prevent these enrollees from achieving citizenship and voting rights. Yet it's very likely that activist judges will award full citizenship because Congress, they will say and rule, is prohibited from forming second-class tiers of citizenship through legislation. I mean, this is very, very predictable. But the worst thing in this bill is that there's a biometric national ID card mandate hidden in the 400 pages of this bill, which forces all Americans to submit to an unprecedented surveillance and state tracking technologies, supposedly to track illegal immigrants. They're obviously hanging a carrot out there. We're going to solve this immigration problem by giving amnesty, and then in the meantime, by the way, all Americans are going to have a biometric national ID card.
Are you going to accept yours, Joel?
Are you kidding? I'm never going to go there. That's one of the reasons I fly a private plane, so I don't have to use a authorized ID card to get on an airlines.
I think we already don't. We already have Social Security numbers. That's pretty close.
Well, it's much different than biometric ID. There, they can track you.
I follow.
Hair samples and other things like that.
Retinal scans. Come on, they can tell so much. And I think that the technology is such that there are even other things that they can do, and probably are doing, or have at their disposal that we don't even talk about. Now, there's another aspect to our quality of life in this country. It has to do with ELF, EMF. It's electromagnetic radiation. We are being bombarded with it. The difference between 4G smartphone and cell phone service and 5G is enormous. They're pushing they're pushing into a whole new area of bandwidth that really hasn't been used before. It's up to 300 gigahertz. This is huge. We don't know what the human body is going to do with this kind of an energy being pulsed and fluxed through it all the time. It could be a catastrophe for millions of people. We don't know. They don't know.
My son is an electrical engineer involved in cell phone testing, and this new 5G is not just an increase in power. The reason there's an increase in power is because they have to have multiple antennas and receivers in cell phones to broadcast in different directions so that they start to emulate towers. Towers basically have antennas in different directions, and when they see a cell phone that's communicating with it, they have to increase its power toward that cell phone. Now they're going to have cell phones themselves do that. And it's creating havoc in the industry. I mean, how do you test these phones for radiation propagation strength and capability? This multiple changing antenna situation. It's a quantum leap up in power and intensity, and no longer, can you avoid having the rays directly at your brain. They're going in all directions now.
Yeah. They also have something new called millimeter wave, which is very intense and is involved somehow with the 5G program. They're offering millimeter wave service to people in Las Vegas, for example, to hook up to the internet with a little antenna on your roof, millimeter wave, and you get blazing speeds. And everyone, that's what they want. They want that speed, and they're going to get it. So this again is being, where's the FDA? Where are the tests? What is your son telling you?
Well, of course, they're involved in the tests, and everybody wants, more radiated power. That's the big thing in the industry. It's not less. They're not even concerned about protection of the human person.
Thank you. You're exactly correct. They don't care. It's just like smart meters on your house. They don't care. They lied about those. Those smart meters are constantly chattering back and forth and emitting radiation, ionizing radiation that is not good for people. And I just don't know what to take. I admire people who fight and end up with analog. They can keep their analog meter. They have to pay more, a couple $100 sometimes.
They do have to pay. That's what we ran through that just recently. Oh, we're not going to accept the smart meter. Well, your bill's going to go up $20 a month.
That's right, a couple hundred a year.
Why should I have to pay? Well, their justification
we have to send.
We have to read your meter now.
Yeah, we have to send a human being out there to read your meter, so you're going to pay. And here's the downside of it. If you live within a block of somebody, they're going to have a smart meter. It's going to go right through your house. If you live directly next door to somebody, you're going to get it.
My son, tells me, it's only really dangerous when you get close to these things.
How close?
Well, really within about 3 or 4 feet. So it really isn't a danger a house away. It's intense radiation. It's just like your cell phone. You should use an earbud or something instead of your cell phone right up against your head.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I hope I hope it works. I hope it's exactly what you're saying.
Distance does against radiation. Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break and come right back. A little bit more about 4G as opposed to 5G. As we continue with Joel Skousen, World Affairs Brief, I'll tell you how to get a free copy of this world-class newsletter in just a minute. Okay, let's get right back to it. Let me make a quick announcement here. You heard the Numana commercial, and I would urge all of you, you're paying close attention to what Joel says, and we've been covering this for a long time for you. It does appear we are going to be involved in a conflict with North Korea, possibly nuclear, we don't know. Which will bring more Fukushima-grade and worse radioactivity over here. You're going to want to be prepared. Numana is all about preparedness. Joel Skousen is all about preparedness. He's probably the most informed, brilliant preparation and preparedness expert in America. I would urge all of you to take advantage of the Numana offer through the end of the month, which is tonight. But I think they'll honor it tomorrow, and I just take the chance, say you heard Jeff, and he said, please place the order. 10% off, all of it, free shipping. They even have a complete line of organics, okay, which is what I got. Please, if you can afford it, get yourself 90 days for you and your loved ones. Call in tonight, place the order tonight, talk to them tomorrow if you have to, but say, I'd like to take advantage of that 10% off free shipping. I heard Jeff last night mention it. Please get yourself set. It lasts 25 years. You got nothing to lose. Nothing. So take care of yourselves. Okay, back to Joel and 4G and 5G. Just to give you an idea of the differences in performance here. And this is what, and I got a question for Joel after this. The peak data rate for 4G is 1 gigabyte per second. 1 Gbps. 1. The peak gigabyte rate for 5G is 1,000% higher. It's 10 gigabytes per second. 10, not 1. That's a lot of information. That's a lot of data. That's a lot of noise into your head. Data bandwidth, 4G starts at 2 megabytes per second. 5G starts at 1 gigabyte per second and goes right on up. What else we got here?
See, that's why they need multiple antennas.
Yes,
pointed in different. That's the only way that you get that.
They're going to blanket the hell out of us. Frequency band, 2 to 8 gigahertz at 4G. Remember when 2 gigahertz was considered out of this world? 4G can handle 2 to 8. 5G can handle up to 300 gigahertz. Think about that. What would your son say about that in terms of potential health problems, Joel?
Well, as I said, it's a matter of closeness, and power of the transmitter. So it isn't that it's deadly at any distance. It's exponentially more harmful as you get very, very close to those transmitting antennas.
Right.
And so now you have more power next to your ear. You've got multiple frequencies coming out. That's where you get multiple bandwidths. It's not just one bandwidth and one channel. It's multiple channels and multiple bandwidths.
So you put that phone next to your head and with 5G, and you're re-radiating some pretty powerful and dense material. That's going to be, I don't know. All right. Well, I would urge you all, as Joel said, to get earbuds. They have them that aren't wired. There's actually a little tube that the sound goes through. Rather than have a wired earphone stuck in your ear, a little earbud, get the kind, I think they use them on airliners, or they used to. It's just a tube, and the sound goes right up the tube into your ear. That's safer. You don't want to be hardwired to those things in any way. At least not in my view. Okay, what's next?
Well, the major story, of course, last week in World Affairs Brief was on this shooting in Florida. And, it's just incredible to me. I just want to make a general statement that you have, even assuming we don't talk about the conspiratorial aspects of the FBI bearing information as they did in 9/11, knowing that these people were going to attack and buried the information. Look, my father was an FBI agent. You have a paper trail a mile long, especially on a tip hotline. In today's atmosphere about school shootings, to have somebody threatening to shoot up a school and you lose that's just unbelievable. It was buried, Jeff, not lost.
Of course.
But, you're going to make the entire Second Amendment public suffer for what was totally predictable. School people failed. The sheriff's office failed. The FBI failed.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to give them a bit of it and say that they failed. But I know that the FBI, because of what they did in 9/11, of course, buried this information. And I think it got tagged. This came up as a person of interest, meaning that he's part of a black operation. So we're not going to process this, and we're not going to alert the authorities about that.
You heard what Joel just said, part of a black op, okay? Thank you. Go on.
And, this happened all through 9/11. The Minneapolis case where the FBI agents calling headquarters and say, this guy is taking flight lessons and this, and down in Phoenix he's taking flight lessons and wanting to learn how to turn off the transponder, and there isn't a transponder on a Cessna 150, all kinds of signals that they were training for a hijacking, and headquarters quashed it. And so it isn't the normal FBI agents know what's going on. It isn't the person who took the tip, but he passes it up above, and it gets railroaded aside. I'm convinced that, Nicholas Cruz had some part in this. I think he was under, mood-altering drugs. He said openly, I had demons talking to me, telling me what kind of weapons to use and how to shoot. I think there's a story to be told about the Sneeds who took him in. I mean, the first family, after the mother died, who took him in, had to get rid of the guy because he held a gun to the head of somebody in their backyard. Now, you can't tell me that the Sneeds, the next family to take him in, didn't know about that, and yet they claim to be totally clueless about the dark side of this guy.
Mm-hmm.
They claim that I had the only key to the safe, but he ends up with a key. How does that happen? But what about the gas mask that he had? What about the multiple clips of ammunition with the swastikas on them? And what about, the armored vest and other things? How do you explain that? And not to speak of the multiple witnesses now that there are other shooters involved. So what we're saying is here we have a preconceived agenda of gun control, and we're going to keep getting shootings of children throughout this nation until they get gun control.
It's death by 1,000 cuts to the Second Amendment. They're just going to keep killing our kids. Yep.
But as I pointed out in last week's brief, the Dunblane shooting in England, which gave them guns, it only took one shoot up a school. It only took one to get gun control because they didn't have a Second Amendment. We have so much strength here in the constitutional nature of the right to bear arms that it's going to take multiple thousands of children to die before they finally goad enough people and representatives into voting for this stuff.
And
now,
go ahead, Joel. Go ahead.
Right now, what it appears to do is you get the Republicans who are supposed to be defending the Second Amendment in the mood of giving up one thing per incident.
Yeah.
All right, one thing, bump stocks after 11, that's got to go. Now then there's got to be background checks, or there's got to be the ban on the assault weapons. Or the only thing they're probably going to get is they're going to move the age up to 21. So incrementally, they start taking away one right. So there's an expectation even among Republicans. We've got to give something up every time there's a killing or a shooting.
Coward's way out. Dick's Sporting Goods, Field and Stream.
Right. Dick's Sporting, Delta Airlines. I'm boycotting Delta for boycotting the NRA. Now, the NRA is not the paragon of the defense. They're a compromising outfit. I like Gun Owners of America or others, anything but the NRA, which is professional compromisers. But nevertheless, for these corporations to jump on the bandwagon like they did in the transgender bathroom issue and boycotting North Carolina, I stopped using PayPal because of that, went to Stripe because they boycotted over transgenders. More than one can play this boycott routine. Target got really savage.
Here you got Dick's. Right, Target, yeah. Dick's Sporting Goods, Field and Stream. They will no longer sell any firearms of any kind to anyone under the age of 21. And yet, Joel, an 18-year-old can go join the military, be trained to kill and be killed, use full auto, whatever, tanks, aircraft, call-in strikes, but he's not allowed to buy a .22 rifle at Dick's Sporting Goods. Friends, don't go into Dick's Sporting Goods anymore. And if you do, tell them, I'm turning around and walking out of here because of your hypocrisy. You'll let our young men and women go into the military and train to kill, send them overseas. They'll be killed. They'll kill others with firearms galore. But when they come home and come into the store to buy a .22 or whatever they want, you won't sell it to them. How disgusting.
Here's the incremental nature of their strategy. They know that none of these things work.
They damn well know they don't work. Absolutely.
That's right. They know, but basically by taking them one by one, getting the Republicans to compromise one after another, like on increased background, and they've already admitted background checks don't work. So what are you going there for anyway? Just an invasion of privacy. But once they prove that they don't work, the next shooting, there has to be something else, and they get closer and closer to gun control, and then gun control itself doesn't work. You've got to confiscate all the millions of weapons like they did in Australia. Because they have gun control, and they're still shooting, so we've got to get rid of all the guns. I mean, that's where it's headed. And I'll tell you, that means revolution in America because there are millions of these weapons out there, and there are at least a major portion of those people that are not going to give up their weapons.
Nor should they. They're also talking now about mentally and emotionally unfit people for gun ownership. Now, what does that mean? You watch where it's going. It'll mean anyone taking any kind of mood-altering medication, pain relief medication, anyone who admits that they have a couple of beers a week and they'll be termed as out of control. You watch how far this can go. Orwell would tell you in a second.
Well, there is something to be said for the being able to name a known threat and to have a very good judicial process, not a psychiatrist, but a judicial process to show that he's made threatening statements, etc., and to temporarily, not permanently, but temporarily ban him from having a firearm.
While he goes through whatever.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah.
Saying is that there's a legitimate process for targeting the threat, but don't penalize all law-abiding citizens and stop them from defending themselves over the mistake of the FBI and the Broward County Sheriff and the school people and all of the psychologists who knew that this guy was a threat. Don't punish everybody else. Punish the guys who are messing up the playground, and they were giving threats and are beating up on other people and said, but they shouldn't have guns, but it shouldn't be permanent. They could repent, let them change and show, but I think there's a legitimate place for stopping and targeting directly problematic people. And ultimately, those problems aren't going to go until you solve them. The very fact that our public schools are breeding grounds for all of these bad attitudes.
And you know what's worse? Prisons and jail. Even worse.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
You want a hardened criminal? Send somebody in there on a misdemeanor or a fourth class felony or whatever. He'll come out a hardened criminal. It's so we are so stupid as a society the way we handle these things.
You tell me that you in a person atmosphere can't stop gangs from operating.
You're breaking up a little, Joel. Say that again.
You can't stop. I mean, you can't tell me that in a prison environment you can't stop gangs from operating. The guards know who they are, but it's because they have this lawyer process that you've got to be able to prove it with evidence. I mean, once you're in prison, you ought not to have to prove it. I mean, if the guards see gang type of, they ought to be able to interdict and isolate those people. Gangs can't operate unless they have contact with one another. And those guys, those are the ones that ought to go into solitary confinement.
Couldn't agree more. We have some real grave... We're at a crossroads here. We have a constitutional republic or we don't. That's where it's going. That's where they want it to go. And it will go there. This Dana Loesch, the NRA spokeswoman...
Yeah? What a sap.
I don't know what all to do. I don't watch her. I haven't seen her except in pictures. Tell me more about this.
Did you see what you said at the CNN town hall?
No.
When this shaved head girl from the high school, she's become the poster girl for gun control now. Shaved head.
Right.
If was a right-wing pro-Trump person with a shaved head, she'd be called a neo-Nazi. But because she's on the left, because she's calling for gun control, she starts out talking to Dana Loesch, is that we're going to try to protect your children the way you would never protect ours. Insulting Dana. And she gets up, Dana Loesch responds by saying, we honor you for, defending your right to free speech and say things, and we are not going to criticize you in the least. I mean, this was the most insipid, permissive response. She should have said, you start out insulting me, something you have no basis to, and I'm not going to respond.
Why are these people so afraid? That was a fear-based response that Loesch made. Fear. She was afraid of being criticized somehow or branded.
Yeah, but you don't have to bend over backwards to compliment this little thug.
That was
obscene.
This
is a shaved head thug that needed to be dressed down, and people would have applauded that. But this was such a setup.
Right.
CNN has made such a thing about trying to debunk the issue of the Hogue person who said that he was,
you know about his father, who he works for. He works for Cubic at Prism. Go ahead.
That's the different one. That's the spokesman for the anti-gun lobby. His father and mother are big in the Planned Parenthood and other types of things. And this was the conservative father and son who said, CNN didn't want me to go on and talk about giving retired veterans and having them hired to protect schools. They wanted to stage and give me a staged question that would be pro-gun. And, of course, CNN has come out and showed how the father kind of edited out a little portion of the email, which, made CNN look bad or like it was staged. But I have other proof that it was staged. There was another family.
The whole thing was staged.
Sure. They wanted this hall packed with anti-gun people, and they went around searching for anyone. And this other family said when they told how they reacted when CNN producer called them and said that they were disinvited. Oh, you don't have to come. In other words,
CNN's boss, Zucker, and Jake Tapper both said when they were asked about, well, what about this disastrous town hall that you were caught? It was all a setup. And they laughed and they said, people will get over it. They don't care. They don't care a damn. Did you see the video? A Miami television station helicopter made it somehow, a newscopter, over that high school while the event was still formally underway, and they got video of 4 cops coming out of one of the buildings. Two of the cops had no head covering. You could see they were Caucasian. The other two were in blackout, full black outfits. And this is not standard SWAT. SWAT is usually an olive green or dark green SWAT team. These guys were both in black. They were both carrying together what looked like a black, I'm going to call it a duffel bag, a black bag, maybe 2.5, 3 feet long, maybe 10 inches around, and they brought it out and they lifted it up. These are the guys in black, full blackout gear. They put it in the back of a civilian-looking white pickup truck and sped off. Now, I'm going to suggest somebody's going to have to prove to me that those were not shooters and that was not a gun bag. I don't know what they were doing with it. I can send you the video.
Eliminating evidence of other guns and shooters that were there.
There you go. Thank you very much. And the videos...
Witnesses that had people in khakis, in military gear, directing them of where to go. I mean, this was...
This looks like a Mossad special op to me, another one. Look, they have videos now. YouTube has scrubbed them almost all. I played 2 of them on the air here, Joel, when this happened.
I know that they've scrubbed. They're censoring everything now.
Yeah, 2 students, both said, they were boys, and then that girl, the blonde girl, but these 2 boys both said, very sharp kids, there were 2 shooters. We were hearing gunfire going off on this floor and that floor at the same time, and it wasn't echoing. They identified the situation, the crime scene, as 2 shooters.
And then there's the story of Jalen Martin, who called up Alex Jones and said, my teachers told me that they had the Secret Service come and give them a shooter briefing 4 weeks prior to this. Secret Service. I'm disgusted. This whole thing was another setup. Yeah.
The architecture is obvious. It's just sickening. And they're killing our kids. You can figure out who they are on your own. This is just wrong. It's so evil. It makes me sick.
Yeah, and it's not going to stop. And that's what they learned with Sandy Hook. If Sandy Hook gave them 0 gun control.
They didn't get anything. Oh, hold on, Joe. You're breaking up. Hold on. You said, and Sandy Hook, and then we lost you. Turn your direction around. Maybe turn your head with the phone.
Okay.
That's better. There you go. Okay, you started out saying something about Sandy Hook, not giving gun control.
Look, they didn't get a single piece of gun control out of Sandy Hook, out of shooting up all those children. So that gave us Las Vegas. And they still continue to blame it on a single person, even though there were multiple shooters. The FAA tower said their active shooters on the runway were closing down runway 19. I mean, how can there be a single shooter narrative when the FAA tower is talking about active shooters running across the runway? Multiple casinos shot up.
It was a citywide operation. This was citywide. It was an attempted coup d'etat. I do believe the guy being hustled out of the Tropicana casino was MBS, shaved, out to have a good time, invited in by one of his cousins, Wally bin Talal, who owned the top 5 floors of the Mandalay Bay, and I've got the video showing 7 floors above Stephen Paddock's room, muzzle flash coming out of that 7th floor higher unit, one of the 5 floors that was owned by Walid bin Talal, and that, by the way, that muzzle flash was going in the opposite direction of the venue. So what were they shooting at? At the same time, you can look behind the Mandalay Bay and see one of those helicopters going by with clear, unambiguous muzzle flash coming off from below the front or out the side. So that was a huge operation, and those people were just slaughtered to try to cover it up.
It's just amazing how in the autopsy, none of the ballistics were ever revealed. I mean, there were going to be multiple. Not one bullet was traced. No. They didn't even trace any bullets. They just assumed, this is all Paddock's weapons. Of course, there's only a handful of shell casings in his room on the picture. I mean, it would have been a foot deep in all of that had he done all the shooting.
I don't know. I did photo analyses of that room, other photo analyses. We've got video of 3 shooters on top of what looks like an RV, and then we got shooters with muzzle flash coming from the 4th or 5th level of the Luxor aimed down at the crowd. This was a ritual sacrifice to cover up a failed coup d'etat. Joel, let me tell people real quick how to get hold of World Affairs Brief. You can get a complimentary copy. Comes out on Fridays. Just write to Joel and ask. All right, get a pen real quick. World Affairs Brief every Friday. Editor at worldaffairsbrief.com. Editor at worldaffairsbrief.com, and just tell Joel, please send me a free copy. Heard you on Rense. We'd like to see it, so you'll get it. Joel, thank you very much. Outstanding analysis.
Always good to be with you, Jeff.
All right, you take care. Thanks.